Thank you so much for joining us for our weekly Wednesday workshop. I'm Felicia Bell from the Gulf States Regional Office located here in Jackson, Mississippi. And today joining us is Linda Coffey, and she's another ag specialist from our Arkansas office. So I'm so glad to have you today, Linda.
Thanks for having me, Felicia. I appreciate it.
So most of our guests today and even our listeners in the future will be watching this video because they want to learn about livestock and really what we have to say about livestock. As most of our clients know, we're sustainable agriculture. So we talk about various breeds and methodologies of how to raise those particular animals and techniques and so forth, from us being ag specialists, but also us being farmers, and the wealth of information that we gather from working with, tremendous farmers in our region. So we'll dive into those particular questions. We will have a Q&A at the end, but we don't mind interaction. We definitely want everyone to learn from what we're sharing. So if you have that burning question, you definitely can type it in the chat if you're online, and then you can unmute yourself if you would like to chime in if you're a caller. But we'll definitely get started at this time. If Linda, I would love for you to introduce yourself and really if you could tell like your backstory. Most people want to know, how do we get into agriculture? Are we born and raised in it, or is it something that it be like a midlife thing to say, hey, I want to start growing food or raising animals? So if you could share that, that would be nice.
Okay, thanks, Felicia. So my name is Linda Coffey, and I am based in the Southeast Regional Office for NCAT. I'm a livestock specialist, mostly focusing on sheep and goats and grazing issues. Although I did recently write about hogs, partly because I grew up in agriculture. I was born and raised on a family farm in Missouri. Was a great childhood. We had cattle and hogs and horses, and I didn't care so much for any of those. But then we got sheep when I was about 10, and that became my enterprise and my thing that I could do by myself. And so I think I might be working on close to 50 years of sheep production, almost continuously being involved with it, because I had our flock until I went to college. I sold it to one of my younger brothers, and then I worked on the sheep farm in college. I did an internship while I was in college. Right after, I did my master's work on a multi-species grazing project using sheep and cattle, of course. And then when we moved to Kansas with my husband's first job, we bought a farm and we started raising sheep. We were there for 10 years in Southeast Kansas, and then moved to our current home in Prairie Grove, Arkansas. And we again have a small farm raising primarily sheep. Right now we have about 40 ewes, and we raise the Gulf Coast breed, a heritage breed, and I'm really happy with them, really happy with how tough they are. I also love dairy goats, so alpine dairy goats is what I've raised. Through the years, we've also had complementary enterprises, because one of our farm goals is raising our own food. So we'd get some bottle calves and raise them up on the goat milk and raise them up for beef. We'd have some hogs and we'd sell some and eat some ourselves. And we have also had chickens, mainly for eggs. Occasionally we've butchered some. So I really like the diversity of a farm that has a lot of different things. That's the way it was when I was growing up. That's what I prefer. But we do have to look at labor issues. And now we have simplified our farm down to sheep and the dairy goats at the current time. Every time I say something about getting calves or hogs or chickens, my husband says, more or less, when you're retired and I'm retired, we will do all of that. So I'm waiting for that point in our life, Felicia, where we can get back to how it used to be on our farm. So sheep and goats are a passion of mine, but I do love the other livestock as well.
Oh, that is amazing. That is so amazing. And I didn't realize till recently, not just a conversation we have had earlier, that we have similar backgrounds for as all of the poultry, the small ruminant, the large ruminant that we were raised with, and that being just a part of our lives. And then now that we're grown and have children, we're still doing it. And that's just amazing to really be brought up that way. I love it, and I wouldn't take anything for it. I'm very grateful that I was raised that way to learn how to basically, like you said, take care of ourselves for as food is concerned. And that's basically what we were possibly even get into today, because these weekly Wednesday workshops really was brought on by the crisis. We wanted to continue. Our particular office is very big on giving technical assistance, but usually through workshops face to face. And so, of course, our office had to pivot and figure out a way to continue to do the workshops, and that's what we have today. So a lot of the workshops try to talk about how we can assist our farmers in pivoting during this crisis, as well as offering some other options. So that's what we're going to be focusing on livestock today, and just wanted to have a conversation on even how you have pivoted since this, and myself. We definitely can have an interaction with this conversation, because it's been a doozy to really figure this out, but we definitely are here to help our clientele as well. So one, I wanted to go back to what you mentioned about the Gulf Coast native. One of our questions that we wanted to jump on is how do heritage breed animals assist our environment? And so I kind of went with air, water, and soil. So it's like, how do we utilize those particular animals in helping our environment? And of course, it's helping us, but how does it help our environment?
That's a great question, Felicia. And I've been thinking about that. I guess in my mind, grazing animals help the environment by improving soil, by lessening the need for tractors and heavy equipment, and so use of fuel. We don't use much fuel at all on our operation. Heritage animals in particular are tough. They're
Yes.
really hardy. They don't require a lot of inputs. They don't require a lot of assistance. And so I think that's an advantage that they bring to the table. They don't require the use of grain so much.
Mm-hmm.
So looking beyond our farm, some other farm, we didn't need some other farm somewhere to expose the soil so it could erode to grow the corn. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I don't know, what were you thinking about the benefits?
In the same, it's the inputs.
Yeah,
Because if we're not utilizing a lot of inputs, then we're not damaging the air, the water, the soil. Because we have byproducts. Whatever we do on our farm, you're gonna have byproducts, good or bad. And so if we're utilizing a lot of inputs, of course, we're adding that. You can't live in this world and not have something engaging into our environment. We're putting something out there. And so that was along the lines that I was thinking, because I wanted to let our viewers know we both raise Gulf Coast native sheep. And they are a hardy animal. But my purpose for even adding that sheep to our farm, I did do the research at first, because I wanted a heritage breed animal. So I did the research on the Livestock Conservancy website. And then also when I looked into it, they were, what is it, Linda? It's not endangered yet. It's the one prior to that.
No, actually, they're critical.
Critical. Thank you. very
Yes.
critical. And I am that type of farmer that I want to be an intricate part in helping bring it out of that. And so those were the first two reasons that I wanted the animal. And the last, of course, is I was a parent with children, small children, and I was like, okay, I need an animal that really can take care of itself, because that's how I was raised. We didn't baby the animals. We didn't do any of that. And so I wanted to make sure I kept up the same type of traditions on our land, because I am on the same land that I was raised on. So I'm using the same land. And so I still wanted to have that. So those were my reasons for capturing and wanting that particular breed, but also wanted to make sure that I'm not hurting the environment either. That's
Yes.
very, very important to me. So I always feel like when it's us as humans tend to hurt the environment in our management.
Mm.
Because the animals are here. They do what they do. They know what to do. But sometimes we engage in a management style that we start hurting the air, the water, the soil. And so that was kind of along the lines that I was thinking, like, how can farmers utilize heritage breed animals to assist them to become better managers?
Well, that's great. And I really think grazing management is the fundamental piece,
Yes.
even before you think about the livestock. Because I have been on pasture-based farms, and I bet you have too, where grazing management wasn't really the focus. It was just the animals, and they weren't paying attention to the soil health, the soil quality, keeping it covered. That's the big thing that I see. And if we have too many animals on our farm, we can't accomplish that. We can't keep it covered. They're going to, or if we leave them in one place for too long, they're going to get down to the bare earth. And when they do, we're opening up the potential for weeds. We're stopping the water absorption of the soils. So when we get a welcome rain in the summertime, it doesn't sink in, it runs off. You can't grow crops or grass with water that's gone. So we need our soils to be a sponge, and that requires us to leave enough residue behind to graze. We came to the Gulf Coast sheep for the parasite resistance trait, and it was because we were in trouble. I think we had the right amount of sheep on our place, but they're not the right kind, and we were losing them to internal parasites in the summer. The heat stress, the stress of the production system we were doing, it just wasn't working. So when I learned about the parasite resistance that the Gulf Coast sheep have, and when I looked into them like you did, I was like, this is a sheep I want to see. I want to see how they perform on our farm. And from the very first lambs born, I was so impressed, because I was used to having a sheep breed with a kind of a big head. Sometimes I had to pull lambs. Sometimes I didn't have to pull the lambs, but they, I think, were deprived of oxygen on their way out, and they were dumb. I would have to hold them up and help them learn to nurse. And the Gulf Coast sheep just give birth, and the lamb, I counted 10 seconds, that lamb was up trying to nurse. And I was like, okay, now I'm interested in what they can do. And I have not seen a lamb born in at least the last 2 years, because they just do their job. These sheep just do their job. And I think that's true probably of other heritage breeds and other species. They just do their job. So if we can facilitate that by good pasture management, by good grazing management, by giving them that good nutrition through the pastures, then I think we have kinds of animals that are a joy to raise. That's how I feel about mine.
Yes.
So.
Thank you for that, because that is so important. Yeah, and in this region as well, I have seen the bare soil, and I always be transparent with my farmers as well. Over the years, I have done that because I get busy and not able to move them, but we recover. I figure out. But one thing about farming is always a learning experience every single day. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. And I always want to be transparent with farmers because sometimes we do mess up, but we're supposed to learn from that so we can do better. So I really thank you for that. And I forgot that as well because the health aspect of the animals was like a given, but you are right. Foot rot resistance, parasite resistant. It was several things that, yeah, just so many things that particular breed, just, wow, they are amazing animals. One question we have from our guests is, how might Gulf Coast sheep help compacted land? And so I was thinking on that, Linda. We can answer it, not necessarily now. We can think on it so we could come back and make sure we answer that. And then within that is the second question is, how do we learn to shear? Now I can answer on my end right quickly with that particular question. It was my son. He was showing sheep, and I'm the type of parent that that's what 4-H is about, and FFA is that our children learn to do that particular project. And so I wasn't a parent that I was going to do it for him. Literally, he had to learn every single aspect of raising those sheep. And so he learned how to shear. And today, yeah, he's almost 30 now, but he helps us learn. He trains us and teaches us how to shear so we can, keep it going within our family farm business. But it was just that one child learning from, the 4-H specialists and the different people there that was assisting us, that was now able to share with us today.
Yeah. There are shearing schools across the country, and I think the American Sheep Industry website probably has links to where you can find training opportunities. It is a skill. My shearer, I hire that done because he can do one in 3 minutes. I've timed him, and he doesn't cut them. And so for me, I'm very happy to write that check. For him to do that. It's less stressful for the animals. I think if I were younger, I might be more tempted to, figure out how to get better at it. But when I was in college and tried once, it took me 45 minutes to do one.
Wow.
So if you took I didn't cut it either. Like, come on. Nobody has that kind of time. So if you're going to shear your own sheep, it's a good idea to get training. And like you said, from a mentor, from an ag teacher or somebody. But there really is an art to it. And I've watched the movements that my shearer makes. He goes to New Mexico. He shears thousands.
Yes.
Every year. He's like on a circuit, and he is excellent. But that is going to be a consideration because he's not any younger than I am.
Yes.
At some point, we're going to have to figure that one out too.
Exactly.
Compacted land, I mean, my thought is that growing perennial forages is going to help compacted land. And so grazing the sheep across it appropriately, like with as much high density kind of like giving them a high impact and then a long rest. And going back to what you said earlier about we make mistakes. Oh my goodness, yes, we do. One of my mentors is Dr. Ron Morrow, who has taught grazing schools for years. And he kind of helped me when he said, don't worry about making a mistake with grazing management. You're not going to make a mistake. I said, of course you are. He said, no, what you're doing is you're experimenting and you're watching what happens, and then it can heal and it can adapt. That takes some pressure off. If you just tell yourself, if I do it wrong, if I do it too graze too short,
I think we lost you, Linda. Is everyone able to hear me? Good, okay. I think you're back, Linda. It froze for a little bit.
I saw that. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, good.
Well,
Please finish, please finish. Yes.
I don't know where you lost me at.
So we were talking about the professor, your mentor rather.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, he said you can't really make a mistake, which is not the way I think of things, but what he's saying is you have the opportunity to learn. So you do something and then you watch what happens, and then you adjust your management for the future. So if you graze too short, you're going to notice that it doesn't recover very fast. And you're going to, if you're watching and paying attention, you're not going to let it graze that short next time, because you're going to learn from all the experiences you have. And if you think of them as experiences rather than mistakes, it does take off some pressure. But I was saying, for us, it's super important not to graze too short so that the forages can recover more quickly and it shades the soil. It's going to get over 100 degrees here, and where you are too. It's going to get over 100 degrees. And if you don't have something covering that soil, it makes a huge difference to the soil life, to the amount of moisture that you can retain, and to the growth rate of the plants, because they've got to have that moisture to grow. So it's super important. And I hope that our stocking rate is okay for what we have. Usually it is, but as I was telling you earlier, Felicia, we've had a lot of baby lambs in June and July. Our Gulf Coast sheep lambed in December and January, and now they're giving us another crop.
Gotcha.
Which means they need a lot of feed. Those lactating mothers with twins, they need a lot of feed. And so instead of having a farm that has, dry ewes and not that many lambs, because we've sold a lot of lambs, now suddenly we've got a situation of a lot of lactating ewes who need a lot of groceries. So I'm praying for rain to continue.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah, and it does. That's the one thing with being a small producer, how you can double your herd very, very quickly. And that always, we train on this, is having a market, whatever that market is. If you're going to sell breeding stock or you're going to sell it as meat, having those things lined up so it's not so much pressure on us as small producers. Because if you're 15 and now you're 30, but your land can only feed 15, that's a lot. And I have been in that position when it increased very fast, and then I had to wow, okay. But that was my learning experience, because we did a lot of breeding stock before I went into actually doing the meat production. When we first started, we were only selling breeding stock. But what I had to learn is having the people lined up, just like I had done with the Great Pyrenees puppies, having them basically sold before they're born. And so I was like, wow, I didn't realize I had to do that with the lambs as well. And so, yes, because it really puts a lot of pressure on the land. And that's where I made my mistakes, is doubling that number very quickly and not realizing the pressure that is putting on the land until, you see bare soil and it's like, oops. And so I really having to backtrack and learn from that. But I do like what your mentor said for us, thinking about experimentation. That it is that, and not necessarily that we're failing, but it's a learning experience. We're experimenting on our farm to get better. I love that. I really love that, because that does take a little pressure off just by saying that, and kind of rerouting our brain on the way we do things. And I wanted to let our guests know that I hope we have answered your question. If not, please, continue to type in the chat. We will definitely do our best to get it answered. The only thing I was going to add with the compacted land is moving into the vegetable type things, like the forage crops that have deep tap roots, that give you that, where they are really planted to break up compacted soil. And so, but then the best part is that your animals can't eat the tops off and even start eating those turnips or what have you. But utilizing those foraged turnips that have the deep tap root are very known to go through some tough soil. I've seen it in several field days where it really can break through things that you don't think it could break through, but it really does. And so that's one thing I just wanted to add as well. And then the other with the sharing, I have as well, Linda, hired someone to when we don't have time. And so you're right. We have to learn what we can do as small producers and not take on all of that. And I really had to learn that because I was a producer that really, I was like, I could do it myself and save money. And of course, that was when my oldest was younger and we did it together. But now, you know, everybody is older and yes, they're still helping me, but he was the main person that just taught me, especially when he moved away for a few years, of how to be more efficient. It's like, Mom, you got to learn to put systems in place where you're not doing the heavy lifting like I used to. So very grateful for that because yeah, we have to get to a point that we can start releasing some of that heavy lifting. And as you say, with the sharing it's not easy because the animals are heavy and most of the time they're heavier than I am. And then trying to hold them up and shear, it gets a little bit difficult. So we do have to make sure as farmers that we're self-care, making sure we're keeping our bodies up to par and not taking on all of that, definitely when we can hire out. That's good. I appreciate that so much. And again, if you have any other questions or if we did not explain it clear enough or you want more for us to dive deeper, please put that in the chat. And our callers, you can unmute yourself to chime in as well. One of the other questions I wanted to talk about is how do livestock assist sustainable agriculture farmers in small microclimate environments? So now we kind of, went broad. How do they help or hinder air, water, soil? But now how do they work or assist us on the microclimates we have on our farm?
I think that's another good question. And I think breed selection is really important. And this is going back again to the heritage breeds. These are traditional breeds that were developed to fit a certain place, a certain kind of climate, a certain kind of place. A microclimate of the farm also, to me, I'm not sure how you meant it, Felicia. I was thinking about like on my farm where I have the woods and I have the pastures, I have different areas. And so I can use different kind of livestock to use those different areas, or ask my sheep to go in the woods and browse, and they will.
Yes.
Ask my goats to come on the pasture and graze, and they will. Having animals that fit different places and that do a job on different places, like fertilize the soil, eat the weeds. That's the one thing that I think our sheep and goats are really great about, is for people who have cattle, sheep and goats can improve your pasture for your cattle without a cost and give you some meat as a benefit. So leaving their manure, eating the plants that the cattle don't prefer is a really good use for sheep and goats.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And yes, I was thinking along those lines, the microclimate that's created by the animals on the land. Because when you start bringing more, because we're there as humans, we create that climate as well. But then when you start bringing more animals, more things on the land, it changes the environment. Basically, again, what they're putting out. And so if we're doing good things, then you have a good microclimate and everybody is working good together. I call it symbiotic relationship on the land. But yes, you went right where I wanted, in the notion that the animals can really go anywhere on the land and they're good. They're comfortable, they can manage. And again, it goes back to what we're saying, not necessarily if you have a farmer that may not be physically capable of what we call babying the animal, or, you know, they may not be physically able to do that. And so if that animal is able to move about the property in their own manner and be comfortable, you know, knowing where to go, what they need to do without human intervention. That's what I meant, yes.
And our job as managers too is to pick out those animals that do that well, that,
yes,
that live well in our environment, on our farm, with our management, and select them, select their progeny. And the ones that are problem animals just need to go somewhere else. They may work fine on a different farm, in a different environment, but if they're not working for you, I think they need to go. Going back to what you said earlier about the time and the efficiency, if we have a sick animal, that loses a lot of time, and
yes.
it makes everything hard. And I'm not about that. So we select those stronger animals. There's a man in South Africa, Dr. Gareth Bath, and he has this phrase: "Stop selecting sissy sheep." And I think that could be true. That could be true for cattle, hogs, goats, chickens
Exactly.
too. Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're right. I was always taught get rid of them, and it's so hard for me to see now, Linda, that some of our farmers will not let go. Oh, and I'm like, and what I tell them is they're eating your pocketbook up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you do not keep an animal on your land that's not giving back in some form or fashion. So if that animal is your dairy goat that's giving you milk, okay, it's giving back. It's doing something for the family. But now for you to keep an animal on your land, regardless of the smallest of animal to the largest, and you're feeding it, oh no, you have to let it go. And I'm not understanding, and I don't know what farmers are saying to you. Why aren't they letting go? That is new to me, because as you stated, and I have stated, we were raised that if it's not producing, you have to let it go. And not necessarily, we're not talking about slaughter. So I want to make sure that our listening audience understand, we're not always talking about, you know, taking that animal to a slaughterhouse. We're just talking about it just is not a fit for our land. And I'm not understanding why farmers are keeping. I don't know if farmers have shared anything with you on why they're keeping them.
I can speak for some goat people, and I'm not I mean, I am one, but
Yes.
they get attached to a certain animal.
Okay,
And
I understand.
they just want to keep, they think, well, I'll do this thing and then it will all be fine. And they just keep trying to fix the problem with, you know, maybe a new mineral supplement, maybe, I don't know. But the exception for me with what you just said is I do have some older animals that I give a peaceful retirement to. I had an old dairy goat. She had served me well for 12 years. I was okay with her not giving back anymore. She had given me more than 30 kids over the course of her life, and she was old and thin, and I was willing to let her just be on the farm. But she wasn't sick. I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying she didn't. Obviously, she did fit in my environment, or she couldn't have been so productive for so long. But, yeah.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So we're going to jump back to the chat. We have several questions. So the UN claims we have 60 harvests left. How will or could the Gulf Coast sheep play a role in the future of farming?
Say that again, please.
So it says the statement is the UN claims we have 60 harvests left. How will or could the Gulf Coast sheep play a role in the future of farming? So I'm not sure of the statement, and of course, Mr. Dennis can come on and maybe expound on the statement itself from the UN. But the question, how does Gulf Coast sheep play a role in the future of farming?
Yeah, I need more information about that statement and more context. But I mean, for me, the Gulf Coast works for me and you on our farms because it's a pasture-based animal that raises protein without much inputs. It's very, it's got good good fertility. It breeds year round. It's a dual purpose animal with wool and meat. And we can raise meat very cheaply on perennial pastures using an animal that has a lot of hardiness and a long lifespan. I just see a good point for them. They're not the only animal. You know, they're a favorite of mine and of yours, but there are other kinds of livestock that also will help us in the future of farming because we can raise protein, we can fertilize the soils, we can manage our lands to keep a good biodiversity, a good pasture composition. I just feel that grazing livestock have a lot of worth for our landscapes. You know, land that's in perennial pastures is a carbon stock. Like
Yes.
it's absorbing the carbon. So that's helping our environment in a lot of ways. And the work of Alan Savory, I know you're very
Yes.
familiar with that, Felicia, makes me a little sad because why aren't we paying more attention to this? Why aren't we using more perennials for agriculture? Why aren't we going away from the high input and, you know, the corn, all of the things that we do that leave our soils exposed so that they erode and so that they become less and less productive over time. I feel like grazing livestock would really, grazing more livestock, raising more pasture-based enterprises would really help the future of agriculture. And it can help by building up that soil organic matter so that we can absorb the water, so we can retain the water. We are on this kind of downward spiral where we're not taking good care of our soil, so it cannot take good care of us. And I think we need to reverse that process. And Gulf Coast sheep could be one part of that, but they're not the only part of that by any means.
Exactly. Yes,
Tell me
I definitely
your
agree.
thoughts.
Yes, I definitely agree. It's not just a Gulf Coast native, it's so many animals that we could utilize. And again, I always like to, that's why the first question about heritage breed animals. I am biased to that, but I will never tell farmers not to choose the particular breed that they know will fit on their land. You try it for yourself and see what animal works for you. The only reason why I'm biased to heritage breed is because the longevity of the animal. Just that longevity in the historical context of the animal in surviving all of these years. That's the only reason why I'm biased to it, meaning that regardless of what generation you are coming into farming, that animal will work for you. And so that's why I like teaching and training on it and sharing it, because some people really don't know they exist. And so it's making sure that, again, giving our farmers alternatives, understanding that it is other animals out there that can assist us. But I do agree wholeheartedly that it's so many other animals that can assist with the future of farming, as well as, like you said, saving us. The soil has been depleted so much in our country and really around the world based upon how we have farmed. And so some areas are still doing well because they kept their traditional way of farming, but majority of the land mass on our earth is just been depleted. And so if we could utilize animals and utilize growing methods, even when we're doing our vegetable reduction, that we really be mindful of the soil. So we have other questions. Did you want to add something?
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, I like what you said. It's fascinating to me how well the system works together. You know, you mentioned earlier, like symbiosis, synergy.
Yes.
It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think science has shown more in recent years just how complex and how all the parts work together when it's done well. And regenerative agriculture is something I'm super excited about it. Last night I watched a webinar on the Understanding Ag
Yes,
website, Dr. Alan Williams
yes,
and Mr. Gabe Brown, and it's fascinating to me. All the ways that livestock contribute to a healthy soil, all the ways that a good healthy soil grows more plants, which helps the livestock. It's just so interwoven, and it's a really beautiful thing. I think we need to learn more about that, and we need to respect that more about how the soil works and what we can do as producers, as farm owners, to improve the way our soils function on our farms. So,
exactly. Yes, being more in tune,
mhm.
because I think what we forget that we are a part of the symbiosis.
Yes,
We don't
yeah,
think we're part of it, most people, and that's where I think we're going wrong for as managers, those farm
mhm.
managers, the land stewards.
Yes.
We take ourselves out of the equation where like, no, we're the biggest sometimes problem
I
in the
love what you
equation.
just said there. I love what you just said there, Felicia. And yes, the stewardship of it, the responsibility of it,
Yes,
I want, and you do too, to leave the land better than we found it,
yes.
to let the next generation come into land that's functioning better than when we came in. Even though our
Mhm.
parents and grandparents and the previous owners of my farm were doing the best that they knew how, we've
Yes,
got a lot of information now that really helps us understand the principles of how to take care of our soil. And a lot of it goes back to the ways that our parents and grandparents did know.
yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. So another question is, what is the minimum flock size that you would recommend?
Ah, you may disagree with me, Felicia. I think for beginners, I like to see people start with 10 to 15
Hmm.
ewes and a ram,
Okay.
because as you said earlier, they will increase very quickly. You know, if
Yes.
they have twins and you wind up keeping a fair percentage of ewe lambs, you're going to have more
Hmm.
sheep very quickly. And 10 or 15 is enough, I think, to act as a flock and to teach you what you need to know. You're,
Yes.
you're going to learn a lot from just the act of raising them. But if you've never had sheep before, I'm not sure, I wouldn't recommend that you start with feeder
Yeah.
lambs.
Yes.
Yeah, and raise them up, because it's not such a commitment. If it turns out that you do not like sheep, they'll be ready for
Yep.
market in 6 months or so.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
you can actually not even have to keep them over the winter if you decide you don't care for these animals. But if you love them, like I do, my favorite time of year is lambing season. It's just
Hmm.
so exciting to see the new babies come. And as I said, it's exciting for me because they're always vigorous and healthy. It wouldn't be
Yes.
so much fun if they weren't. Um, what do you think for a minimum flock size?
I agree with farmers that may have the experience and the resources. So I usually say with the limited resource farmer, I usually say 5. So
Okay,
that's that one round with 4 ewes, starting 5, and again, it's still going to double very quickly. But that one is manageable financially, but then also manageable if they're new and beginning to lamb, to sheep, raising sheep. So it's not too big that you it gets overwhelming.
right.
And so it's I look at it as experience. I really,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, and I should have said, it depends on your land resources too. I talk to
Yes.
farmers all the time that have a fair amount of land, but they have only fenced an acre or two.
Hmm.
That's not a good
Hmm.
situation. Uh, One guide, it's a rough guideline, but if you figure that if your land would support I don't know what your land is like down there. Here, it's like 3 acres to a cow. I
Hmm.
don't know if it's similar to that. Well, a cow equivalent to sheep is 5 or 6, probably.
Yes.
So, so that helps you look at your land base and then look at your pastures and say, how much could my farm actually support? And then you don't want to go there. You don't want to go that high, because you're going to consider that there might be a drought. You know, I wrote about this, about how to size it up in our sheep and goats frequently asked questions publication on ATTRA. And so listeners who want to know more about raising sheep, I really think that one and the illustrated guide to raising sheep and goats will really help if you're beginning and thinking about the enterprise, because you do not want to overstock your farm. That leads to overgrazing.
Yes.
And that leads to that downward spiral I was talking about earlier, and health problems and, you know, parasite issues. Even though Gulf Coast are a parasite resistant breed, if you mistreat them and you starve them, you can make them sick.
Exactly.
So we can't just depend on, oh, this is a tough breed. We still have to give them reasonable resources.
Exactly.
So, and the resources of time that you alluded to, Felicia, that's great, but also how much land is fenced. And that's the problem with sheep, really, is the fence, because some of our farmers have a barbed wire fence. That's not going to cut it for sheep. And we've adapted them by putting a woven wire fence to the front of it. You can adapt it by using hot wire to the front of it and make that work. But fencing is one of the things that I wish it were easier to fence sheep than it is.
Yeah.
Do you use Electronet on your farm?
I never had to turn it on because they were so tame. I started out with the electric netting, but just to fence them in temporary to put them on new land, new grasses. But I never had to turn it on. And so I know I say that and people look at me and I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad. I know I'm really good in that my sheep were tame enough, or I guess docile enough. But I will say this, let me backtrack the reason why. Every single animal on our property I raise. So I buy our animals as lambs and then raise them up as adults. And so they really get used to us as being babies. So that, that the loving on them and helping them grow and just all of the love you give babies. We would do that in the notion of, and when I say that, letting them be animals, but letting them know we support you. So that management, everything that they need is right there. They never have to suffer and wait on water, or the water, sitting out in the heat like now and gets hot. Everything was always there for them. So they realized I can connect, that two-legged animal to, oh, they're pretty good for me. They're bringing me stuff. Every time I need something, it's here. And so all of our animals tend to love on us and take care and do their job because we did it first. And so that's how our farm kind of runs. And so that's why I never had issues with them wanting to go any other place. That long as the grasses are there, they eat. And I've always taught our farmers is if you get too low, like we spoke about, that's when your animal is looking for other grasses. They want more food. So you as a manager, like you say, it's the fencing. And so you have to be there to move them to new pastures, or if it's automated, because I know some of our farmers have automated gates now. I haven't moved to that. That would be a blessing one day. But the automation of opening gates and letting your animals go to the next pasture when they're ready and stuff. So, but yes, and I've utilized that. But my oldest son really did not like it. He did not like the net fence because, it would get tangled sometime and he would just scream. So now we have moved, and we've probably been doing this, oh my goodness, 10 plus years now, cattle panels. So we don't use the sheep panels, the sheep goat panels. We use the cattle panels, but we utilize it on a temporary way. So we're able to take down, move fence very quickly. We have gotten so efficient with it. And we don't use what comes with the T-post. We use hose clamps. And so that's something just within our family. We love hose clamps because we can use our drill and move faster with moving the animals, because they're, as you know, Linda, as your pasture grazing, they're waiting to move. They're waiting to move, and you have to be efficient. My ram hit the fence. If I just had a bad day and I'm not moving fast enough, he would ram the fence and let me know you're not moving fast enough to get me to the next pasture. So we had to get a little bit, we had to get efficient, and that's just our methodology on our land using cattle panels, hose clamps, and T-posts.
Oh, well, I love what you said there, and you're right. If you keep your animals content, they're less likely to try to get out of your fence. So that's good. But we only use Electronet hot because maybe goats have figured out how to, they get their head and their feet through, and pretty soon they're hung up, and that is a mess, and that will make you fussy. But I love the Electronet. Our farm is fenced. Maybe you remember from when you visited, Felicia. We've got a mix of, in places we have woven wire, where, for example, a weaning pasture where we just really didn't want them cutting through. In places we have woven wire with a hot wire across the top, so that anywhere we are, we can hook to it and get cross fencing. Okay. And the Electronet works great for cross fence. My husband, the last time that he arranged his fences, sized them so that the net goes across with just a little extra to spare, so that it's really easy to use the Electronet to subdivide. And I love it too, because I can graze my neighbor's land, which he wants me to graze to keep the vegetation down. So we can put this up in, and we just hook on our border to our hot wire, and it's really great. It gives us a lot of flexibility. As far as working with the net wire, you have to, the Electronet, you have to fold it right. And that takes some patience. If you don't fold it right, it will not unfold right. So I'm sure that's it's probably contributed to your son's feelings about Electronet. I really like the flexibility that it gives us. And we've set ours up, as I think I've alluded, my husband's setting it up for retirement to be easy. And so our pastures tend to you can open one piece of fence and another, and then they're moving in. And like on your flock, they're looking to me or to my husband to move them to something better. So they're very cooperative when we're ready to move them. And it's very quick for ours because we've thought through how the lanes work and how the thing. Water now, how do you deliver water to your animals? Because that was a real challenge for us for years, and we didn't put enough attention to it soon enough. I realized that later, because we had no water on the back 40, and our animals had to come to the barn to get water. We were mining the nutrients from the back of the farm and redistributing them to the front. Manure is an asset when it's where you need it.
Yes, it is.
And it's a problem if you let it accumulate too much where you don't need it. So that whole problem was fixed by just being conscientious about putting water in the pasture where they are. Don't have them trail back to the tank. For us, we use some portable tanks, and we have some barrels that we fill and drive back there and dump. Sheep don't drink that much water, so we can get away with that on the back part, but it's really nice on the front part where we do have hoses that we can put afloat on a little bucket and keep it cool, keep it available, clean, and cool. So how do you do it on your farm?
So if you remember, I say I'm on the land that I was raised on. And so we did have water already placed in the pasture. I will say my dad was a plumber. And so, I know. So all of those things were done for my grandfather to make it efficient. And then I inherited, so it's still efficient. And so we do have water right there. So like you said, running hoses, and then we can, put those where we need it. Now, the one thing that I have learned over the years, and this is learning from Mr. Jim Garish, is the quick connects. I don't have them on my land, but I've worked with farmers to do that. Like we have went and put water line down for farmers and put the quick connects on, and I love it. So if for farmers, I would always, if they are able to run the water lines, bumping up against that perimeter line, on the perimeter line, and have your water with the quick connects, it makes your life so much easier.
Yeah,
So
I would
yeah,
love to
that
have that too. Yeah,
I would
those are
love,
great.
I wish we had that, but we don't. But still, for the larger pastures and open pastures, where I am, we have a lot of fencing. And so it would run into a problem if we tried to lay those water lines down now to do quick connects. Because again, we're on property that fences were already there. But
Mhm.
for a new farmer, just bought land or just leased land, I would do the quick connects. I definitely would do that. Yeah. But we do the same, Linda, moving waters, dry, like you said, pulling water from this place to that place with the tanks. I know my son also built apparatus where we could pull hay, water, and grain to various areas and stuff on a trailer that he built to have everything on there to be able to fill the water. But it depends, as you know, and most farmers know, it depends on your land, where you
Mhm.
are, if you're hilly, what you can do. Because yeah, the quick connect will probably be hard for some type of soil types. It just may not work for us just digging the water trenches. It may be difficult based upon your soil type. But yeah, it's some things out here now, even the above ground, the little water dome type things I've seen. I know Georgia, a lot of their farmers utilize that as well, but they are on top of the ground, but they pull them with a four-wheeler. But they sit on top of the ground, and they kind of look like little eggs or what have you, but that's kind of their watering system. And so there's various watering systems out there. So I always just ask, like, our audience to look and see what's conducive for you, because now things are a little better in the notion of variety and options for watering. Based upon what you have. And the only other thing I was going to add, Linda, I still have my net fence because, as you know, they're not cheap. And so
No.
I still have my electric net. I use it now for shoots, making our shoots in various areas for me to do things with them or place them where I want them to go. And that has been a lifesaver, being able to just put the net up really quick, open it up, and then they go down the lane. And so that's how I use my electric net now. And stuff.
Yeah,
But I like what you said your husband do for us. Yeah, if you have large acreage, you can make just a straight line of the electric net to use as cross fence. And I love that.
well, and we also use it like you do for a lane and for
Yes.
like subdividing. He has a pasture of summer annuals, and
Mhm.
he wanted them to use it more efficiently. So he subdivided it into thirds so that they couldn't get on it all and trample it all. They could just use a little bit at a time. We also use it to keep them off something that we want to rest. In one place,
Oh,
we have to cross one pasture to get to another. And they'd already used, I'll give you their numbers, 9, 8, and 7. And they have to cross 9 and 8 to get to 7. They'd
mhm.
already grazed 9, and I wanted them not to graze it anymore. Again,
Yes.
because they're going to take it down too short. Sheep just love that fresh growth. That
Yes.
they want to graze short, and it's our job not to let them do that.
Yes.
Electronetting to the rescue. Just put it across the front side, and it forms a lane, and that lets my grass be protected while it's regrowing, while it's resting.
Yes.
So yeah,
I love that.
it's a useful product. And my husband didn't let me buy any for years because it was too expensive.
Oh my goodness, it is.
But once
But
we
it's a
got
lifesaver. Yes.
one reel and our one bundle,
Yes.
and he recognized how useful it was, I think
Hmm.
now we own 4. So he's
Yes.
become a believer. They're
Yeah.
very
It's very helpful. Now, does anyone milk Gulf Coast sheep? Do you know of anyone doing that?
I don't know of any. Well, I did know of someone. I don't know if they still are milking Gulf Coast sheep. It was Green Dirt Farm in Kansas City, Missouri. They were
Okay.
going to milk Gulf Coast and make cheese. And I have
Mhm.
not checked on that farm in a few years, but I was a little wondering about that. Some of my Gulf Coast sheep do milk pretty well,
Mhm.
but they're not dairy sheep.
Yes.
And even dairy sheep are going to lactate for 5 months, maybe tops.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm not sure how practical it would be to milk a Gulf Coast sheep. Having said that, I did milk one the other day when I was telling you about the lamb got on the wrong side of the fence
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
needed to get some colostrum. And I told my husband, this one has teats just as good as my young dairy goat. I mean, I really could milk her, but
Mhm.
I think I'm going to check up on Green Dirt Farm in Kansas City, Missouri,
To see. Okay.
near Kansas City, Missouri. Yeah.
Yes. And only thing I can add is I do know some farms that have done that with sheep, just not this particular breed. So of course it is some farms
Right.
that milk sheep, and
Yeah.
stuff to
But
use
East
for
Frisian,
products.
yeah, East Frisian is the breed that I usually hear of for people milking sheep. What about you?
I haven't heard of a particular breed. It's just you as farmers we're efficient, so we're trying to get everything we can out of the animal we have. So it's really I have not heard of that particular breed. It's just the animals these farmers have on their land, and they will try it, but it's really they only are milking for value added products. So they wanted to do like a sheep milk soap versus
Right,
yeah.
right.
So they was trying to move into a new territory per
Yes,
se, the reason why they were doing it and stuff.
right,
So
right.
wow. So it's a question for you, Linda. What kind of goats do you have? This particular guest may have missed that. I think they missed it on the front end of our conversation, so they wanted to know your breed.
Sure. I have Alpine dairy goats. I used to also have Saanens, and I liked them equally well. The reason we settled on the Alpines was it's simpler to run one breed, and I love the color diversity. When they're born, you just don't know. It's always a surprise what they're going to look like. Whereas the Saanen is always white. So the Alpines are more interesting. So does that answer?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I know we are kind of at our time, and I definitely don't mind we're going to have other sessions on livestock, and we definitely can dive deep on other topics of this because as our audience can hear, Linda is a wealth of information when it comes to small ruminant. And we just wanted to make sure that we're sharing that with just the audience at large. It's going to be other people, of course, listening to the YouTube video once it get posted. But then just the expertise. Linda stated earlier, she writes many publications for small ruminants. So please check out our ATTRA.NCAT.org to be able to learn more about what Linda put out, as well as other ag specialists for as our publications, our podcasts, other webinars, and of course our YouTube channel. But I thank you so much, Linda, for joining us. And I know we have another session with you. And so we can continue this conversation. And I would ask our audience, if you have other questions, please email us. My email address is FELICIA, B as in boy, @NCAT.org. And Linda, could you give yours?
Sure. Mine is LINDAC. So my first name, last initial, Linda C @ncat.org. Felicia, thank you for inviting me to join you. I love to talk about sheep and goats and
I know.
livestock and grazing,
Yes.
and I really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness in coming up with some big picture questions that
Yes. Yes.
it's good to think about all the big picture. So thank you.
You're welcome, and I thank you so much for engaging with me because it's just always nice to be able to talk with fellow coworkers that love this industry as much as each one of us. We love it. That's what I love about NCAT, because we are actual farmers, but we're here to help producers as well. And so I appreciate you just engaging with me on these particular topics, and wanted to let our listening audience know Linda would be with me next week as well, I believe, to follow up and do our kind of part 2, still livestock, and we'll continue to engage with more questions and your questions as well. So please join us again every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Same link if you utilize online, and also the same phone number if you're on the phone. So thank you again, Linda, for joining me. I appreciate you so much, and I look to definitely getting with you again on next week, and hopefully we can do some more in the future.
Thank you, Felicia.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.